There is just one book that we have left to talk about on the 2022 Booker Shortlist. Do you have to clean yourself right now? Hi, my name is Sarah Freshly and welcome back to Freshly Read Books. So if you have not been following, I have been doing all of the Booker shortlisted books, doing reviews on each of those this week. So we are on the last of those books, but I do still have a video tomorrow. So as a refresher for what the schedule has been / is for tomorrow, day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, and day 7 is rankings and winner predictions. That's right, today we were talking about The 7 Moons of Maali Almeida by Shehan Karunatilaka. So starting with the synopsis for this book, this follows the afterlife of Maali Almeida, our main character throughout the book. So at the beginning of the book, Maali has just died and he is entering into this afterlife that exists in kind of this office feeling space. And there are many other dead people there as well. And he doesn't really know what's going on. He doesn't remember dying or what has led to his death, or really just like anything that happened that could have contributed to how he died. Back on Earth, he was this photographer that would take pictures for a lot of really gruesome scenes to show the ins and outs, I guess, of Sri Lanka at the time. And he would work for a bunch of different publications. He wasn't like a photographer for a specific publication, but he would work with a lot of different people. He also is a gay man, although he wouldn't... He, I think, himself is kind of conflicted with his own sexuality. Like, he knows that he likes men. Past that is kind of ambiguous. The way that he thinks about his own sexuality is very interesting. And basically, Maali has 7 moons or 7 days in this, like, in-between space before he is essentially getting reincarnated, is what it sounds like. Although there's a lot there, and I won't touch too much on it because that's a lot that is at the end of the book. And I don't want to spoil it because the ending was by far my favorite part of this book, which is always wonderful to say. But he ends up meeting somebody within this afterlife and realizing that it's not all that it seems. Like, this in-between place has got its own bureaucracy and its own inner workings, where some people are kind of rebelling against moving forward and moving past their time in the in-between, or just wanting to like stay where they are, saying that they aren't getting justice or revenge for things that have happened to them or things that may have led to their own death. They want certain things on Earth to happen, and they are still very much into what happened in their lives and are not ready to move on past that. And there's this question of like, should you want to move on past that even? Like, what's the purpose of that? What's the point of that? So this book follows Maali during those 7 days. And specifically, he's trying to get people to his shoebox of pictures that he has under his bed that he believes is going to be this huge turning point in what's happening politically in Sri Lanka. And in this in-between that they are in, they are able to kind of travel around using like wind, essentially, or hearing somebody say their names. If they can concentrate well enough and they hear their name somewhere on Earth, they're able to go there and see what's happening there. So they're still technically within the space of Earth and they can still see what's going on, but they can't really interact with it, with the exception of a few things that is explored later through the book. As for the themes that I want to talk about with this one, the first one is just Maali himself and like really the sense of self that he has. I think Maali is an incredibly selfish person, but in a way that you still really like him as a main character. It's really hard to explain because I don't even fully understand it myself, because Maali's got a lot of flaws and he's a very like distant person. Like, the people that he had relationships with in his life, I'm not talking just like romantic relationships, I just mean relationships in general. You would think that he would be very close to those people, but it almost always feels like he is just like one step removed from them. And it's only really in death that he starts to realize how much they mean to him, or it's not even really that, like how much they should mean to him. And there's still a little bit of that disconnect, but he's got this feeling of like, oh, I should really care about them, but I'm actually going to care about this thing. Like, for example, one of the first scenes that we see him be able to travel on Earth to somebody that has said his name. He's seeing his two former roommates, one of whom he was involved with romantically, and then the other one, many other people assumed he was involved with romantically because people didn't know he was gay, so they assumed he was dating the female that he was living with. But he's sitting in on that, and they're talking to the police saying that he's gone missing and like, please look into this and everything, because they don't know he's passed away yet. And when they part, he's like, I know I should go with my friends, but instead I'm gonna go with the detectives because I wanna see where this goes. I wanna see where the investigation of my death goes. Which, fair enough, but it's a good display that's early on in the book, so it's not a spoiler, of how he feels like he should care more about the people that were in his life, but he really just cares about him and his own life. So he's got this kind of selfishness to him that I think is a great thing to have in a character in a story like this that is so much about this like afterlife, and where it centers the story around Maali and him discovering how he died. But also you get to kind of see him grow and evolve as a person. And then the other theme I want to talk about is just a little thing, you know, the meaning of life. I think that this book really questions what the meaning of life is, especially in a time of such turmoil where there's like suicide bombings, car bombs, there's death squads, like there's so much happening in Sri Lanka during this time, and it does make you kind of wonder, like, what is the point of it all? And I think that that is a question that this book often asks. There is a lot of this idea of reincarnation or of karma and the ability of coming back as something else in the future. So like, that's why you should do good things even if you're in a world that is just absolutely terrible in the moment. Just do good, because then later you could come back as something better. And I think that a lot of us kind of know this idea of reincarnation, that if you are good enough as one thing, you'll come back as something that is seen as being greater, with a human being like the top of the top. Like, you want to come back as a human. And there's this wonderful quote. I'm also going to read the sentence above it just because I really love the tone of the sentence and the rhythm of it. Shadows move across the asbestos, and not all of them belong to the cats or the bats or the roaches or the rats. Do animals get an afterlife, or is their punishment to be reborn as human? And I think that that's just such a great take. Like, is it really a reward to be reborn as a human, or is that a punishment? Especially when you think about what is happening to these people in Sri Lanka at the time that this book is written. How can you ever say that somebody's life that they lived before led to them being born again in this moment, and especially that would be a reward just because they got to be human, and yet they suffered their whole lives? Also, I don't think that this book necessarily answers the meaning of life, but maybe it does answer it for different people at different times, because we get to hear or see or get a gist of what some people's point of life is for them. And I do think that the ending provides like a little bit more clarity on that, although I do think that it still leaves it up to you, the reader, to decide for yourself. But one of my favorite moments or quotes that pertains to that is that we must all find pointless causes to live for, or why bother with breath? Because on reflection, once you have seen your own face and recognized the color of your eyes, tasted the air and smelled the soil, drunk from the purest fountains and the dirtiest wells, that is the kindest thing you can say about life. It's not nothing. Which again is like kind of a sad but beautiful thing. Like, I really love that quote, because on one hand, just on surface value, it almost makes life seem like a sad thing. The best thing that you can say about it is it's not nothing, but it's the sum of the good and the bad and the everything in between. It's all these things, and it's just not nothing. I just thought, I don't know, that I've been ruminating on that quote for a while. And so, of course, we have to ask, do the Booker Frog and I recommend this book? And yes, we do. We do indeed. But overall, I did really enjoy this book. I think this is one of my favorites from the list as a whole, but you'll find out more about that tomorrow when I do my rankings of all of the books that were on the short list and the long list, as well as predict which book that I think is going to be the winner. So be sure to subscribe so that you can watch that tomorrow. Also, please let me know in the comments what you thought of Seven Moons and whether or not you think that it is going to be the winner. And with that, I will see you tomorrow for the last video in this week of reviews. Bye.